Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for a lunchtime discussion. Um, we are here to talk about affordability and climate in New York City. This is an ongoing series that we're doing with the Waterfront Alliance, Rebuild by Design, the City Sponge, and with support from Con Edison. And we're trying to examine that big topic, but with breaking it down into subtopics. And today we're actually going to focus on the small business point of view. So, affordability and climate, what does it mean for small businesses? And in particular, with regard to flooding. This is going to be a discussion. It's not a lecture. We're trying to make it so it feels like we're all sitting at a table, just having a chat and comparing notes. And we're going to really try to go not just talk about risk, but focus on solutions and tips that people have found helpful that might be helpful to you. And also some ideas that might be not existing yet, but that we would like to see happen in the city. Um, the way this will work is we'll just do quick intros so you can see all the good people we've assembled. Then I'll do a little level setting with some slides, just some facts and stories to share, and then we'll get into the discussion. But thank you all for being here. We know everybody's busy, so we hope this is worth your time. Um, let's introduce the people that we have here. We really tried to get a good group of a cross section from across New York City. Obviously, we can't get everybody, but we wanted different perspectives, and these are all people we think have a lot to add to this topic. So why don't we just go around the horn and we'll start from left to right. So Nadia, do you want to start off?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nadia Adam. I am from Staten Island, and I run a nonprofit called the Staten Island Industrial Alliance that helps small businesses prepare for anything from flooding, workforce for green economy. So we're excited to be here and chat more about what small businesses are doing on the island.
Thank you. Mark?
Hey everyone, Mark Caserta, Vice President of Small Business Support at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. And as you look at that photo of me that was from a long time ago, also former Executive Director of the Park Slope Fifth Avenue Mid.
Thank you, Mark. Charles? Charles, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Charles Yu, VP of Economic Development at the Long Island City Partnership. We are the local economic development organization here. We also run the Business Improvement District out in Long Island City. I'm more on the business assistance side, helping businesses with all the issues that they experience, including flooding.
Awesome. Valeen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Valeen Bhat. I am the founder and CEO of Private Picassos. We are an art studio for kids primarily in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. You might have also seen us around the city. We also operate as a mobile business. We unfortunately were hit really, really badly in last October's storm. We had over 2 feet of water fill up my art studio like it was a fishbowl while I had children in there, including my own son. It was definitely a crazy day, and we have recovered and we are back. And now, as my husband says, I'm kind of the flood lady of Clinton Hill, and everyone comes to me with their questions and their pictures and their ideas, and I'm really excited to be on this panel.
Thank you. Daniela?
Good afternoon. My name is Daniela Sancu. I'm the Director for Business Resiliency with the New York City Department of Small Business Services. My work is focused on developing resources and tools for small businesses so they could be better prepared for unexpected events, whether those are man-made or natural disasters. Happy to be here and see how we could further support small businesses. Thank you.
Great. All right, so we have a great group who happen to be free for lunch today. So lucky us. Um, let's just level set a little bit. Small businesses are really caught in between, is what I would say. And I'll explain, but there's about 183 small businesses here in New York City. Many of them are on street levels, right? And they have that exposure, but they also use their basements a lot. Some of them are below street level. Um, New York City in the past 4 years has experienced the most intense cloudburst storms, like the one last October. And we're in a situation where now the 1 in 100 year storm is happening more often than that. Um, Meanwhile, the DEP, who is doing a lot of great work, I don't want to throw DEP under the bus. They are doing a lot. But they admit that everything they're doing with sewer upgrades to CSOs to green infrastructure, they cannot keep up with the projections of water. Um, the head of the DEP last year said, even if you gave me billions of dollars more, I can't rip up the streets faster than I'm doing. As Valeen pointed out, 2 inches of rain in an hour can be like 2 feet in business. It's not just 2 inches. And so one storm can cause a lot of loss. I've heard some say $5,000 a storm. Valeen's going to share her story more later, but it was a lot higher than 5,000. And from FEMA, we know that a lot of small businesses just don't reopen after a disaster, 40%. So it can be the difference between having a job and not. And that's what I mean by caught in between. Small businesses by nature are usually renters, and they are stuck in between sort of an older city sewer system that was built for a different time, and then a building that they don't actually control. The landlord controls it. And there's suddenly big costs. And navigating that is why we're here. Now, the question around flooding is usually, what can I do? And that really means there's like 30 questions. And those 30 questions depend on where are you in the cycle? Is it before, during, or after the storm? There's a lot of component pieces. And I myself went through flooding and answered or tried to answer all these questions just for me and my place. And that's when I started sharing them through the City Sponge, and have now tried to create a software product called FloodLine, which helps homeowners and small businesses do just that. But we have to translate sort of the risk of real flooding to a lot of businesses that may just be like, I'm too busy. I'm constantly putting out fires, just running my business. I don't have time to worry about this maybe big water problem until it happens. And then you're like, oh boy, everything has to stop and we have to recover. There's a lot of retail, small businesses in the city that are already at risk. That map on the right is just about the coastal flooding and the annual floodplain. But there's many more, as you'll hear, that are at risk from cloudburst, which is not reflected on this map. So what we see is this gap. There's these big city projects on the macro level. Some of them are state, federal, city. If you go to your city councilor and say, we have flooding all the time, what are you going to do? My experience is the response is usually, well, we're trying to do these big projects. We're trying to get funding, hundreds of millions of dollars. And we got something, or we think we got something, but it's going to take 6 years to implement. So we're working on it. Meanwhile, what can I do today? Well, the answer typically is call 311 and here's a rain barrier or here's a barrel and sign up for Notify NYC. So there's this gap in the middle, which is what we call education and activation on micro mitigation for people in their places and on their streets. That could be inside the building. It could be outside the building. It could be just the tree beds on the street. It could be the catch basins, but those are things that need more attention. And is the story of one small business in Queens, Finest Sushi. She's been flooded 10 times in the last 2 years, and she happens to be at the bottom of this block, and all the rainwater goes down from the upper buildings down to her roof and then shoots down into effectively her connection to the sewer. And so almost every time it rains, over half an inch, she's getting this. And her landlord says, well, it's the city's problem. The city is not doing the sewers right. he did make some minor adjustments, but it's not solving the problem. And his response is basically like, look, if you don't like this, you can move out. Now, SBS has been helpful to her with both legal and an assessment of like, how do you decipher what she needs to physically do to reduce this problem? But she is not technically in a flood zone. So this is a map from the application process for getting like city money. And that $5,000 city money, which is an SBS program, which is great, but it requires you to be in a city official flood map. And that flood map is reflected here. And that business I just showed you, she's not in a flood zone. So she can't get that money. So it's little things like that that could be potentially part of the solution set. There are a bunch of needs. Flood history disclosure in the lease, better risk translation. What are my options? Money for mitigation, not just recovery. Calculating the ROI on different options, including insurance. Legal help with the landlord. Easier applications for city help. Mobile optimized screens. When you're dealing with a flood and you're a small business, you're on your phone. You're trying to deal with it all in mobile. And a lot of the stuff is not mobile optimized. There's documentation for insurance and recovery, and there's also bid support. How can we help the bids help the business members? So here are some solutions I'm just throwing out here because we are going to try and talk about solutions today. Around risk, getting the free SBS assessment, that's something they do even if you're not in the flood zone. Daniela can speak more to that. But we also need to update the city risk maps because they're not reflecting the real world. And we need to let bids, like Charles is going to talk about, or Mark, submit updatable flood risk map data from their bid. Mitigation. Bids, for example, could have group buying power, pumps, fans, dehumidifiers, stuff that people need, which is very expensive. There should be a mitigation option, menu options. There should be funds like the Green Roof Fund, but for small businesses. Businesses need a mediator who can help them navigate with their landlord, and also legal protection that if they bring it up with their landlord because it's their right to do so, the landlord's not going to penalize them and say, your lease is done. You're a pain. Get out. Recovery, there should be some rainy day funding. You can arrange a line of credit, but most small businesses that I speak to don't necessarily have that. You need to find a water damage company before you have to call them in a panic, because when you call them on the day after the flood, they've got 300, 400 calls they're dealing with. They don't know who you are, and they may jack up the price. So you need to pre-negotiate that. Mobile optimize the city portals, like I mentioned, in particular the damage portal, and just make it easier for people to get funding, city, state. That application is a bit onerous. It takes a lot of paperwork, and people need some sense of, is this worth the effort or the ROI on this thing? And do I do work to prevent it or just recover and then get insurance? How do I assess the financial decisions that are many? So those are some possible solutions. We're going to go now to Valeen's story, and that's a little image of her shop back in October. Valeen, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell your story.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. And I hate seeing these videos, but it's part of the process.
I can stop sharing.
No. You're totally fine. You're totally fine. I'm just like, woo. Okay. Honestly, I was just telling my husband this the other day. Ever since this bad flood, every single morning when I open up my business, I peek into the back to make sure there's not water, because I'll backtrack in a second, but we literally reopened after this major flood, like about a month later. We were open for 2 days, and then there was a little bit of rain, and I came in. Mark actually came that day to present me a wonderful check, and I had a nervous breakdown because there was just about an inch of water throughout most of my studio again that had come up through the drains, and I had a nervous breakdown. So now every morning when I come in, I just look to make sure there's not water, and I say, okay, we're good. We've done everything. Today's going to be a new day. But essentially, I took over, it's a basement space in Clinton Hill. I took it over we opened in September of 2024. And in June of 2025, I had my first minor flood during one of those kind of cloudburst, really intense storms. Water just started coming in from the street, down our smaller set of stairs and up through our interior drains because we're a basement space. Um, Luckily, our insurance did give us, $5,000, kind of no questions asked, because it was up through the drains, but it still cost us about over 10 grand to fix everything. And that was, we thought, we were like, okay, now we'll be a little bit more prepared. We got, a sump pump. We had our shop vac. We got, what I now know are really small rinky-dink, little barriers and sandbags, but we thought we were ready. And I knew, as a resident in the Clinton Hill Bed-Stuy area, that the flooding was getting worse. And I knew about the storms that had hit previously. So I thought I was being really proactive. And the day of the storm, I actually have a video or a photo of me that I had my manager take because I knew the rain was coming down a lot. So I went out, with my raincoat on, and I went with my broom to kind of clean out the catch basins a little bit, which I've seen a lot of people do, and it can make a big difference on those smaller storm days. And I thought I was, getting ahead of it. And then around 3 o'clock, when the storm got really bad, we noticed water was all of our toilet was gurgling, all of the sinks were gurgling, water was coming up through those interior drains. So I went into action immediately. I put all of my things out, and then maybe within 5 minutes, I heard my manager screaming from the front door that water was building up, and that was the video you just saw. So water was literally building up, like filling us up like a fishbowl. So my own son was in the studio. Luckily, we only had a few kids. My teacher took them out immediately to the backyard, so we were nervous about going out the doors in the front. So they were at higher ground. We knew that. So I knew that my child was okay and all the children in my studio were okay. But my next thought was to protect my business. I'm about to celebrate 20 years in business, since I founded my company. So I went outside, saw the water rushing in, and all I could think was to try to pull the door shut to stop some of the water. That was obviously a fool's errand. And luckily, my manager had been recording the entire time videos. And once I realized there was already at least a foot of water in my space, I realized, okay, I need to start recording this. And I'm glad I did because that has really helped us. In the end, we had about 2 feet of water fill up the entire studio. We had to call the fire department to help evacuate the kids. The water completely shattered our front door just from the pressure of the water rushing down, which is pretty wild. I'm grateful that we had that minor flooding a few months earlier because I had guys that I trusted who I could call, and I called them immediately. This storm was done by 3:30, 3:45. I was on the phone with them, I think, by 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and they were at my studio by 7 p.m. Already working on getting the water out. And luckily, it did recede a good amount on its own. Right away, we posted a GoFundMe, which I'm so grateful that my manager had a little bit of more of a clear head to do that. And we posted a video of us, which you can see on our Instagram, of us just soaking wet, traumatized, but saying, this is what has happened. We need help. Because like so many small businesses, we don't have a lot of extra money sitting in the bank account after you pay your rent and you pay your employees and you hopefully can pay yourself. So it was a terrifying concept to think about how much money this would cost. And the community really, really rallied behind us, which is so phenomenal. In the end, we raised about $40,000, maybe 45,000. In the end, everything cost us about 60 grand. That's not including loss of business. We were closed from pretty much the entire month of November, which is getting into our busy season. When the weather is bad, it's good business for us as an indoor kid space. So we lost about 3 birthday parties, which were huge revenues, and we had just the loss of not being open. Our landlords, we do have a really good relationship with them, and they were responsive, and our super was there to help out. People, they definitely were all hands on deck. But the thing that they kept saying to us was, keep track of everything and you can pay for this and then we'll submit everything into insurance. We got flood insurance. So I'm thinking, oh my God, great. This is going to be wonderful. we went through the whole rebuild process. I can't more highly recommend the team we used. They handled the mitigation, the rebuild. Of course, as you're doing it, you discover this has gone bad. Oh, there's previous water damage from the previous tenant, which was not disclosed to us, which we've since found out is illegal. So you discover a lot more things and plan for it to be at least 10 grand more than what you thought, minimum. But we worked around the clock and we reopened. And like I said, 2 days after we reopened, we had some water come up. We had to have the team come back and dry everything out. And I had to hear dehumidifiers, but we made it through and we have been fine ever since. But some of the things that I have done since then, because I view this as there are things that I need to reopen. I need to do what I can to protect myself to be ready for next time. I need to keep pushing my landlord to do more. And I need to keep pushing the city to do more. So what I have done is, I got all these quotes for different floodgates and flood barriers and different things that can happen. That is really the landlord's responsibility. So I purchased an orange construction barrier from uline.com and I had it delivered and it sits outside my studio. And if there's any coastal flood advisory or any heavy rainstorm, our procedure now, we have a whole flood emergency plan, evacuation plan, everything. We put that in front of our stairs to block the water if the street becomes a river, which is essentially what happened. We have our plan that if any water is coming into our space, we immediately evacuate the space. We don't try to save anything. That's just what we're going to do. I'm hoping our landlord will do more, but as of now, they are kind of ghosting me. I think I've driven them a little crazy. And I found out through their insurance agent that they decided not to pursue the claim with their insurance because they would have to pay a $50,000 deductible, which is a huge amount, and I completely get it. But at the same time, now I'm on the hook for this other $20,000, actually 25,000, that I thought was going to be covered, and now it's not. So there's a lot of things. And also in our lease, it says that any damage that happens to our door is our responsibility, which again makes sense. But this was water breaking our door. That was another $10,000 I had to pay. So there's a lot of things that if I were to ever sign another lease and open another location, there are so many things that I would stipulate and be really, really clear about, especially when it comes to damage and who's responsible. And right now, I'm really just trying to. I've gotten to know all of the DEP guys who come out. They were just on my block 2 days ago. I make friends with them. I offer them my bathroom. I chit chat with them. I make videos. I chat with them about what we can do. I'm glad that our community board and our local council member are helping to get them to clean out the catch basins and do the things and clean out the sewer lines. But obviously, there's major things that have to happen. But right now, I'm focusing on what can I do to protect my business? How can I make sure that the current infrastructure that exists on my street is working the best it can? These major projects will take years to happen, but pushing DEP by harassing them via 311 to make sure that the sewer pipe isn't fully clogged with leaves and debris is something that I can do. And I think it's something that we can very easily ask the city to do. We can ask that the existing infrastructure work to the best of its ability. So, yeah.
Thank you, Valeen. There's a lot there a lot of lessons that you learned the hard way. I'm just gonna, before I jump in, does anyone on the panel have reactions or questions for Valeen?
I'm happy to jump in as somebody who is around flooding quite often here in Staten Island. I personally live near Highland Boulevard, which, as you know, bring your rain boots up to your knees certain days, always carry them around. However, I think something that really resonated is that it's how quickly things can change, right? And how quickly your environment can flood. So I really love that you have a procedure and plan in place. And I think anyone who has gone through flooding, it's again unexpected. You have to be able to do safety first. Is everybody out? Is everybody okay? And while doing that, you can miss some of those very practical and necessary steps that you need to fight for insurance and recovery and those resources. So it's like having those discussions ahead of time can be very valuable in saving you tens, even thousands of dollars down the line. Like you mentioned, you were able to take that video right away, and then you went ahead and you're like, we got to get out of here. And so I think, if anything, it's always, you have to plan for worst case scenario and try to put yourself in a position. It's never a good day to think about what could happen, but that plan and procedure can save you, it can keep you safe and save you time and money and more headache down the line. And so we have a small business, a shipyard located in Staten Island in New York. And when we had Hurricane Sandy, yes, we knew there was a storm coming. However, we didn't really have like a full flooding procedure. We're used to storms. And honestly, there's very little you can do, because in an industrial aspect, talking about industrial, you're not only protecting your business, you're also protecting other people's assets. So if somebody else's vessels on your dry dock, equipment that you're renting to dredge or to do any sort of work, there's no playbook or guide for that. So sitting down in advance and trying to figure out where we should move this, what is the best way possible, what does your insurance cover? I think we learned that a lot from Sandy as well. So just wanted to say, I think your natural instinct definitely kicked in, and it's something that people can learn.
Just want to chime in there and capture something, which is Valeen talked about like getting the videos going so she could use that later and then having the plan. But then there's like this decision that a small business needs to deal with, which is, do I try and get stuff out of the flooding zone that I need to protect? Like Nadia, you mentioned assets that I'm going to be on the hook for or have to replace. Or do I just start videoing and hoping that I'll get it all recovered? And perhaps part of the plan for small business is what in our space will be covered by insurance or by the landlord, in theory, and what do we will not be. And we need to film, but we also need to get it out before it gets completely damaged. So I'll give you an example, like a lot of businesses have EV equipment, electric bikes and scooters and delivery stuff. If those things get wet and you turn them back on, they can explode. Like literally the battery can explode. So like perhaps the lesson is a business should know which things you need to get out of the water. Obviously people first, but then get out of the water because it's not going to be covered by anybody. And film as much as you can. Anyway, any other reactions or thoughts or builds from others on the panel?
Yeah, I
Mark?
want to say, first of all, I feel for Nadia because we've done a lot of work in manufacturing areas here in Brooklyn, and the infrastructure is in terrible shape, including the sewers and the roads. So the situations, you can get flooding there much quicker than you can almost anywhere, except
Yeah.
for maybe where Valeen has her shop, because we also learned that you have this bowl where all this water sort of runs in from like a mile around, which is insane. Nobody knew that.
Yeah.
In September of 2024, there was a massive storm on the 29th, I believe. I'll never forget that date. And the chamber kind of decided that the best way for us to be involved, we have a small business resource network team, and I sent out an email to like the 4,000 businesses we've worked on, and then I started getting responses. We have flooding, we have flooding. We figured out where it was and sent people on the ground that day and the next day, door to door, talking and documenting. And the reason it turned out to be valuable is that I was talking to the Office of Emergency Management at the time, and they didn't actually have any idea where the flooding had taken place or how many businesses had been damaged. I know since then that there is an online form that you can go to for the city. You can get some idea from that, but a lot of people don't even hear about that. That's the problem. So, honestly, beyond protecting yourself by elevating and taking video and having insurance if you can, having the city have it. I know we're going to talk about this later. Having the city have a plan to have field teams get out there. Look at where people are going on that form and saying there's flooding, and then start hitting door to door, because what the work we did with the Office of Emergency Management was the basis for having loans from the Small Business Administration. The SBA came out with us to all the businesses that we said were flooded, documented everything, and opened the doors for a low interest loan program. And I just think it's necessary every time there is one of these events, in order to make sure you're hitting everybody, because businesses just don't know how to handle it.
And they're also so busy just recovering and trying to get reopened.
Yeah.
I anecdotally, I'll just add, after that October storm, I believe that there was opportunity to get federal money for recovery, and not enough businesses filled out the recovery form. And so New York City didn't qualify. Which is a shame, right? Because like you said, Mark, people don't know that they need to put it somewhere, and then it maybe is hard to do it, especially on a mobile device, and then they don't get any money. So good points. And Mark, thank you for that work going door to door with SBA, because that actually it sounds like led to the funds that SBS has made available for flooding. Maybe we segue over. Daniela, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, sure. So first of all, I wanted to point out that the Department of Small Business Services usually sends out communication before an extreme weather event is happening, sharing best practices that businesses should consider. So that communication goes out both to CBOs and the bids and so on, and other partners that we have supporting small businesses across the city. So there are resources before, during, and after. Also, there are dedicated teams here across the city through the business solution centers to support small businesses with filing out an application whenever financial assistance is required. But speaking about the resiliency resources that we have available through the Business Preparedness and Resiliency Program, so we have education, emergency workshops, and webinars where we educate small businesses on how to put together a business continuity plan, which is critical, so businesses could reduce risk and also minimize losses whenever a disruption occurs. Additionally, we provide technical assistance through on-site risk assessments. So those are available across the city to any business that has sustained flooding, historical flooding as a result of a natural flood event. The assessments consist in on-site visits by a team of emergency managers and an insurance adjusters, speaking about the importance of having the adequate insurance coverage. So we do offer this insurance component as part of the risk assessments. And the visit practically consists in assessing the physical space, assets, and insurance coverage, as I mentioned, and making recommendations on what are the steps that businesses should take to increase their level of preparedness. So that's in terms of the risk assessments for certain businesses that are geographically vulnerable, and that is defined based on their location using citywide flood mapping tools. We offer a grant of up to $5,000. So that grant can be used towards implementing some of those recommendations that the team, the assessors, make as part of the assessment. On top of that, we have digital resources available per category of hazards, as well as a self-assessment tool available on My City, the one-stop shop website or resource page. And that assessment could help businesses further identify their risks based on the neighborhood they are located, community, um, industry trends, and then it generates, after the business completes a set of questionnaires, it generates recommendations on what can be done to further support with preparedness measures. I also wanted to mention that we have partnered with DEP and also held town halls in different boroughs to further raise awareness of the importance of being prepared and what that means in terms of return on investment over time. And along with those educational sessions, attendees also received flood kit to further support with the preparedness efforts. So
Daniela, I
thank
just
you.
want to clarify, SBS is doing a bunch of things. The assessment that you talked about, which is very useful for a business to figure out, like, what do professionals who are not selling something, by the way, you ask a plumber what to do, they might tell you it's a plumbing thing. You ask a mason what to do, it's a mason thing. So a neutral party to come in and assess what physically needs to happen. Um, Anyone can do that if they show any flooding history anywhere in the city, is my understanding. That said, to get the $5,000, the only way to get that is if you're in a designated flood zone, which is in that map I showed where that one business was not located, which, by the way, Valeen, who shared her story, she is not in a flood zone either. So she did not qualify for that 5,000.
It's funny, I actually just before this meeting finally completed my application for the risk assessment, even though I'm not in the zone, but it was on my list and I was like, today is the day to finally get this done. And I just submitted that and I have no idea what's going to happen with that, but I'm exploring all of the resources that are available. I think one thing, while we're talking about things that the city can do, I know Mark had given me this information that you can essentially file a claim with the city against them for the natural disaster. And I submitted that. And like a lot of things, you kind of send it off and you don't really expect to hear anything back. I actually got a follow-up maybe about a month ago saying, we're still reviewing your application. We'll get back to you. And I took that as a great sign that it wasn't just lost in the ether of everything. So we'll see. I will definitely report back if we actually get something. But that's something I wouldn't have known if I hadn't have had Mark in my life and had communicated with him. So I think, like, I know the interface that you're working on, just like a place to have all of this information because it is so overwhelming. And like everyone has said, just running a business is hard enough. It's really hard to find the time on a sunny day to think about these things. But then when it happens, you have no choice but to.
Yeah.
So I think it really should be part of, and it's not just if you're in a flood zone, it's just like no matter what, I feel like if you have a business in New York City, you probably need to have a plan in place.
Hey, Valeen, someone asked, what city department did you file that claim you mentioned with?
I believe the comptroller, but
I
Mark is
think it's the
yes,
comptroller.
I
Yeah.
filed it. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we can definitely share around because I filled it out and it was definitely extensive, but it wasn't that bad. And again, the fact that I got a follow-up, I took
Right.
as again, low bar, but still it's
Right.
here.
And that's why voting for comptroller matters.
Yes, it does.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it does.
Yeah, and Charles, you've been working across the Long Island City bid. Any reactions to anything you've heard thus far, or any new topics?
Yeah, I think, uh, other folks have talked about a lot of the things that I agree with. One thing I would add on top of that is technology really helps in many different areas. It helps documenting, the stuff that you have, for insurance claims. It helps in organizations like ourselves. Mark mentioned this a little earlier too, sending the survey out, sending the forms out so that people can report the locations um, of the floodings at different streets, at different buildings, so that we can sort of gather that information. Because every time it floods, we reach out to all the different agencies and our local elected offices, and they always ask, do you have a list of all the flooding locations? So we started putting together ready to go, deployable, web form that we can just quickly send it out and gather that information. So I think, technology really helps us speed up a lot of that the process so that uh agencies and elected officials can sort of divert the resources needed to respond to people's issues and
Yeah.
challenges with flooding.
And Charles, you actually take that and make a map out of it. You create like a report, as I understand, and you then share that as to
Right,
make your case to the agencies or the city council or whatever.
right.
Right.
Well,
And
it started as a list of addresses, but then, people were sort of scratching their head where are these addresses located. So, we take the addresses and put it into any of the sort of online mapping
right.
platforms and create a map out of that, and
Yeah.
that which, proved to be very helpful.
I
This
know
is
if I could just jump in about that. Just when I was speaking to the DEP guys on my block earlier this week, I just kept asking them, I was like, what do you suggest that we do? You know what I mean? Like, we are getting affected here. What do you suggest? And I was speaking to the one supervisor, and he said, he was like, I know it's annoying to constantly be told 311, 311, and I don't want to be told that by another government official again, personally, but there is something, he was like, when there is a big storm, if we know that this one area that has always been a hotspot and we're always getting complaints from here, we're going to send someone out there first. Otherwise, it just depends on where they are. So that's something that I've been trying to do, and I just do it. I have a 311 folder saved in my Gmail, and after I get that, I save it there because every time I've reached out to my community board, to my council member, they want to see those numbers. They want to see all of your complaints. They want to see that you've actually done that. So unfortunately, it's one more thing we have to do, but I think it's an easy thing. If you do it on the 311 app, you're done, and then you get it, and then you have a proof that, hey, I've been complaining about this for X number of months or years and you still haven't fixed it. Now I have the receipts. And I think that's a really easy way to do it. And I've been encouraging everyone in my neighborhood, whenever there's a bad storm, like, everyone report a 311 to clean the catch basins. Maybe they'll come out and clean it and it'll make a difference. So it's a small thing, but hopefully it will
yeah.
help.
Yeah, data
Yeah, we
collection.
actually, submit 311 on behalf of the businesses as well as, when they
That's
report
great.
things. So like a couple of us in the office just report 311 like crazy
Yeah.
whenever it
Yeah.
floods. So
You're like a power 311
eh,
submitter. Becca, who's listening in, asked if we will share some of these forms and best practices, which Becca, and to everyone, we will do that afterwards as a follow-up to this meeting. So you don't have to scramble right now to write everything down. But this collective knowledge is great. This is why we're here, comparing notes across different parts of the city. What about just going in a slightly different direction about like sort of mitigation versus recovery? So it feels like we've been talking a lot about recovery, but honestly, recovery is 13 times more expensive than mitigation. That's according to the US Chamber of Commerce study. So if you're a small business, you want to spend 13 times the amount than in recovery than you do in mitigation? Probably not. But mitigation is a thing that sometimes feels like, well, is that my job or is that like the landlord's job? Because the landlord owns the building. So I would love to hear how any of you have sort of thought through that about like, well, it's the landlord, I need to get them to do this and I'll do this. So anyone have any wisdom to share on that?
I mean, I can say, sorry to keep jumping in, because it's all so fresh in my head. One thing that we did is we had check valves installed into all of our sinks. And we also had our plumber install essentially like a rubber balloon inside the interior drains in our space that can be popped in the event, God forbid, we're flooded again, so water can go down. But that really just stops water from coming up. That way, when the system gets overwhelmed, you're not having that water coming back up through your space, and that can be an issue, especially in a basement space. I think the check valves are required. Someone had told me that. I haven't done the research, but yes. So I told my landlord, like, I'll pay for this and I'll be deducting it from my next month's rent. And that's exactly what I did. Because sometimes you can't wait for them to do it. So I think that's something you can definitely do. It's like about $5,000. It's not
Yeah.
an easy thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something that definitely, it's definitely worth it. I think that's something that people can do right away. I also have installed, and I just ordered these online, just water sensors. That way they're all throughout my studio. And then if water touches them, it makes a piercing loud noise. And I get a push alert to my phone because a lot of these storms or issues can happen at night and you might not know it's happening. So that gives you a little bit more peace of mind knowing that okay, God forbid something does happen, at least I'm aware of it. And that's
Yeah.
like $50. That's an
Yeah.
easy thing to do.
Two quick captures there to underline. One, Valeen did the mitigation and deducted it from her rent.
Yeah.
Now, legally, I don't know how everybody can navigate that, but
Yeah.
that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke
And
to them, I told them that, and they were like, okay, like they kind of realized it was important. But I think you got to use that sparingly, I think.
right, right. Pick your moments, but
Yeah.
also the bigger ticket items, right? You want to do the $5,000 thing versus the $500 thing. But also the notion of things happening at night. I talked to one small business and he actually was always seemingly flooded at night and he would be at home like an hour away from his shop.
Mm.
And so he had to make sure that his pumps could turn on without them being manually turned on. So there are pumps that will self-activate, but you need to test them because some old pump that's sitting there in the basement for a couple of years may not turn on
Right.
at the moment you need it. So pump maintenance is part of your small business strategy, and you got to like get those pumps cleaned up and tuned up, just like your vehicles. Anyway, anyone else want to react to that whole mitigation? How to prevent versus just recover?
Well, I just want to say, Valeen's doing the thing that most small business owners don't do. Most of them try to get through the flooding and then move on with their lives, right?
Yeah.
In fact, here, there was a lot of flooding here in Sunset Park, and we went out. A lot of them never took pictures of what they lost. They just threw everything out and started over again and lost everything. So, I mean, it's really important, A, to know if you don't have a point of sale system, at least know what your inventory is and what it's worth. You have to know what's in your store and how much you've invested in it. And if you don't have insurance, look into it. I know it's expensive, but look into it and see if you can find affordable ways to do it. Also, video and take pictures of everything like Valeen did. Get documentation of every flood that's happening. Do the 311 calls. And finally, if you haven't looked at your lease lately, maybe have a lawyer look at it. And I know that SBS has a great program where they offer free legal assistance for free. That doesn't mean they're going to represent you in court. What it does mean is that they'll look at your lease and tell you where you stand. And so that you'll know, hey, if this floods next time, here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what the landlord. I just talked to a tenant recently who was like, I have to spend all this money and the check valve, and I have to do it. It says in my lease, and I looked at it and I said, that's not what it says. You need to go get a lawyer. It doesn't say that. It says the landlord needs to do it. So you need to find a lawyer and then write a letter to the landlord. So
100%. So let's underscore what Mark just. There is legal help from SBS to help you look at these types of issues. They will not represent you, but they can look at your lease and give you some advice. You do need to get the landlord to do what they're supposed to do. And there are laws that protect you because the building is not yours, it's theirs. And the lease is, a lot of people just don't read the lease very close, but you should look at the lease and look at the flood issues. And also, if they've disclosed or said there's no flooding history, that may give you some leverage if in fact you find out there is flooding history. Like Valeen found out when they removed the walls, they were like, oh, this has happened before.
Hmm. Yeah, that was fun.
That's fun.
And also,
But
I just want to also add that, some of the things that businesses can do, maybe not to completely prevent, loss during a flood situation, but could definitely, lessen it is things like, put the cheap stuff at the bottom of the shelf and put the expensive stuff on top, right? You know, you're just elevating it. It's like none of these things cost a lot of money, and you know, it's just thinking strategically how to. I know, you know, when it floods, everybody's thinking about the water, but like sometimes it's, you know, there are different levels and different degrees of flooding, and to help prevent losses, there's a lot of things that businesses can do without spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
There were comments. I know when Jesse was mentioned, the city, you know, should be much more involved, and I agree. A couple of the floodings that we had, there was rainfall of excess 3 inches of water per hour. The city's sewer system wasn't meant to handle that, unfortunately. And I could give advice to some of the businesses that were near the Fourth Avenue in Park Slope to elevate their stuff, but they had one of the businesses that I visited had 7 feet of green sewer water in their basement. There's no elevating that. You know, everything was destroyed.
Yeah.
And it's not very good for the foundation of the building either. So
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to, the answer to that is quite expensive, unfortunately.
Exactly. And that's where an assessment from SBS might be really useful because they can call out like this could get 7 feet here. So you could build shelves, but they may not help you when they're 7 feet. Also, what's the landlord's responsibility to raise mechanicals in the basement, the refrigerator, the boiler, the other stuff that you need to run your business. But what it is expensive to do mitigation, and someone said that in the comments. Is it expensive? I mean, you could get a flood barrier for $50 to put it in front of your doorway if the water's just coming in from the street. And maybe that barrier will keep enough out. But you got to have the barrier before the rain comes. So you got to get a 10-foot long or whatever foot long barrier you need and have it ready. So that's a cheap solution. But when the water's coming up from below, the drains, the toilets, the foundation, or pouring in like Valeen's, you need something much more substantial. And some people have it coming from both. It's coming from below and it's coming from the street level, and they are really caught in the middle. So that's why assessments are important. And shelving is cheap if shelving is actually going to do the trick.
Right.
I was at a business in Cortelli Road, and the guy, it was actually a merchant association meeting. And at the meeting, the guy's like, come here. And he's like, let me show you my basement. And he had everything shelved up because he's been flooded a lot. And he was afraid to complain to his landlord. And he's afraid to lose his lease, which is his lifeline economically. So the legal help with the landlord is a key piece of it. You shouldn't, as a small business, have to pay for everything, especially if it's substantial. I'm going to let anyone else react to like, how do we help small businesses mitigate?
I think one thing that we don't talk often enough about is the sense of getting to know your small business neighbors and being active in the community. I think it makes a world of a difference when, again, these are emergency situations. These are flash floods. They happen so quickly. It can happen at any time of the day. So to, be in contact with neighbors who can also be on the scene, take videos, take pictures, have a plan in place. Also, know who to contact in case of those emergencies, understand where to go. But I honestly feel like, at least in Staten Island, and maybe this is just because we have very much of a neighborhood vibe, in these situations, you never know who's out there you can borrow a sub pump, or who's, in the field trying to get things back together. And so just being a part of that community can also take off the emotional burden as well, because you're doing it together and you're doing it maybe with somebody who's had experience doing this before, which can save you, again, hassle, time. When we talk about small businesses, like Valeen mentioned, like you're already spending your day-to-day running a small business. And now you're at the point where you're also looking to, how quickly can I recover from this? And then I think one thing that we didn't talk about, and I don't want to rehash it too much, but in terms of like policy and things that I think we could look to the city to help instate, maybe from SBS, but perhaps increasing the loan amount size and making exceptions. When you talk about small businesses, many small businesses that are just getting started or within their first 5 years already have a lot of loans out. So it's difficult for them to get loans in between waiting for those resources to come through, which we know can take a long time. People I know have just received FEMA checks from Sandy as late as 3 years ago. So it's a lot of cash that people need to flow over. Some businesses can't wait 2-3 months to get up and going again. And so if we can look at the community, maybe there's grants, maybe there's things that we can do to help these small businesses in times of need, maybe like a little bit of a slush fund for that on top of resilience and on top of planning. I think that's key. We can plan for as much as possible. And then just going back to one thing we're doing in Staten Island. So all of the businesses that we represent in the North Shore, they need peer rehab. And we also need a lot of upgrades to the infrastructure. And these upgrades are, $20-30 million. So not one business is going to take this on. So going back to community, the community has rallied to ask for reparations, to ask for additional MRAD funding. And when we're the first line of defense on the pier, we also protect the communities that live behind us. So, it's a win not only for the small businesses, but we also protect, those who go to school there. We want to see, this area thriving. So, when we think about mitigation, we can also think about technologies, like going back to sewers and flooding. Could we potentially, do a startup that can do IoT monitoring? So that way, if the catch basins are flooding, you get an alert right away, or 311 understands when you need to go get those crews out. The same way that we're, automating certain things, maybe we automate some of those services so that way we can see high risk areas that haven't been serviced in a long time, and areas that need those improvements. So I think technology is great, community is great, and of course, as we've been saying, planning as well.
So we're actually almost out of time, unfortunately, because this is a big topic. But Nadia just sort of did her wish list as if she ran the city, what she would do. Anyone else want to add their wish list? If you were the new mayor or the city council, what would you do to help small businesses with flooding? One thing.
I think I would just, like as I said earlier, make the current infrastructure work to the best of its ability. And if that means flushing out those sewer pipes in certain areas or whatever it may be, more maintenance versus just recovery after. More maintenance of these hot spots that we know are an issue. I think that's just like make the current infrastructure work to the best of its ability.
I think Mom Donnie heard you because he just announced like 100 new trucks or something for cleaning catch basins.
No, I saw that as well.
Yeah. So clearly he's listening to you.
He totally should.
Anyone else have thoughts that you on your wish list of what the city would do to help?
And I think step 2 is just increasing the sewer capacity, right? Because, it's gonna happen more often. Storms are happening more often and more severe. Just need to keep up with rainfall.
Yeah, they've said they can't keep up, so which is why they're doing a lot, but we have to do stuff ourselves while those big projects take years. Anyone else?
I'd make another push for outreach, not just during storms, but in between the storms on a sunny day.
Yeah.
Talking to business owners, getting them ready, getting them thinking, showing them the programs that are available, making connections.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry, I would just highlight the fact that resiliency is a shared responsibility. And we've heard all these great stories about working with CBOs, with landlords, and so on, to ensure that recovery is quicker and that mitigation practices are in place. I would also highlight the importance of leveraging existing partnerships with private, public, and social society, as well as continue to raise awareness about the importance of being prepared, because that is really contributes to building economic resilience over time. Thank you.
And thank you, SBS, for being here and walking through this discussion with us. Your SBS is doing a lot, but we kind of need to help SBS be better and perhaps better funded to meet the needs and the gaps we have. Thank you to everybody for this really important ongoing conversation. We're going to continue it on LinkedIn. So we will gather sort of some of the best practices and forms and stuff that people talked about. We will share it as well as the recording, and we will post it on LinkedIn. So go to one of these LinkedIn pages that you see listed, and we want to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation there. Thank you to the panelists. You're busy people. We really appreciate you. Thank you, Waterfront Alliance, Rebuild by Design, and Con Edison. And we'll leave it there. Thanks all.
Bye bye.